this sort of thing. In 1865, Gregor Mendel, another Christian, found out that through his work, his pioneering work, as a matter of fact, on genetics, your modern genetic science comes primarily through a lot of things that Mendel actually put forth in his papers. This is right around 1865 or so. I think On Origins of Species came out right around in 1861 or so when Darwin published it. But in 1865, Mendel brought out this work that showed you definitively that any species has to mate and reproduce within their own genetic barriers. They don't naturally float from one genetic type of species to another one.
Right.
They can't go. There's a wall there that we know that God put there, and like produces after like, or like reproduces after like. And he proved this scientifically.
Yeah.
Don't hear anything about it in the textbooks. Also in 1914, Ed Jeffries, very powerful scientist, proved definitively that mutations in the genetic code actually break down the organism. They don't improve it. Now, that's very, very important when you come to neo-Darwinism. Classical Darwinism goes off of natural selection and Lamarckism and this sort of thing. But when you get into neo-Darwinism, that's the modern component we have. And most people are very familiar with neo-Darwinism, but they don't realize it. When you read your X-Men comics from Marvel Comics, when you look at certain things like that, when you look at the Fantastic Four, a lot of the Marvel Comics, for example, deal a lot with neo-Darwinism, that through a process of radiation, Incredible Hulk is another good example, through a process of radiation or radioactivity or whatever, you can produce mutations inside of the genetic code, and that will actually improve or in some way increase the power and the ability of the organism. This has been disproven. Anyone who's ever had an X-ray knows they throw a lead apron around you because they know if they shoot those X-rays into you, it can cause problems for you.
Right.
It breaks you down. If the neo-Darwinists were correct, ma'am, what they would find is that when they dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki back at World War II, they would actually find that that place should have been crawling with all kinds of superheroes and superhuman beings. Precisely the opposite occurred.
Right.
These guys were broken down. They were sick. All kinds of terrible, terrible things happened, unfortunately, to the precious Japanese people simply because the radiation mutated their genetic code. It affected them permanently, and they got sick and died. This is what Ed Jeffries was hinting at. They didn't know too much about the specifics regarding genetics and that sort of thing at the time, but he was the one who pioneered the research back in 1914 that actually led to the conclusion you can't mutate something and make it better. If you mutate it, it makes it worse. Okay?
That's right.
So there's a whole little body of history there that shows you that right around the time when Darwin, and who doesn't read a science textbook, or especially an intro science textbook, and did not see Charles Darwin's face and his name on there, but who at the time, though he wrote On Origin of Species, right around that time period, there was a body of work coming out from scientists, Christians, holy men of God, who were also scientists, who were saying this thing can't happen. Yet and still, you see this very interesting kind of conspiracy thing going on here where, lo and behold, the scientists suppressed that knowledge.
Yes, that's true.
And what happened was they promoted Darwinism.
Yes.
Against the facts and against the evidence. And I can talk about that in a little while if you'd like, but
yes,
I just want to put that in there. Yeah, and I also want to say this real quick, and then I'll just stop. Basically, you have to understand something about Darwin and about these other guys. The guys who posited evolution, who were forthright, who were very strong in it, such as Darwin, Huxley, and these guys were not experimental scientists. They were philosophers.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have anything against philosophers, but my point is that when they were putting this out there, they were sitting back trying to explain this thing in so many terms, but they were not conducting any type of experimental research whatsoever to prove definitively that their hypotheses, which would have led to their theory about evolution, had any plausibility whatsoever.
Right.
They didn't do that. On the other hand, most of your modern scientific disciplines, gas laws, thermodynamics, computer science, a lot of high-level theoretical mathematics, these things were actually put forth by Christians who were experimentalists. These guys were empiricists. They not only put forth hypotheses, they prove their hypotheses through experimental research. You can go back today and find the original papers from Mendel and all the guys I named, and you'll see where they actually conducted experiments to prove the truth behind what they believed. And, of course, the assumptions behind what they were hypothesizing was that there was a holy God, the Bible was true, he did set all this stuff up a certain way, and it has to operate that way. Meanwhile, you had the evolutionists who were philosophers. They didn't prove anything, but they said, hey, we believe this is the way it is. We actually believe that this is what explains our natural world and natural phenomena, and they did no major empirical work to back up their claims, and even to this day, evolution cannot be proven. Arthur Keith, famous evolutionary scientist, said, and I'm paraphrasing, evolution cannot be proven and has not been proven. The only reason why we accept it is to reject it is to accept special creation, which is unthinkable. And, of course, special creation is creation by a holy, loving God who established all things according to his divine order and by his word. So I just want to put that out there and just give Paul to see if you had anything to share.
Wow, you've hit the nail on the head. Yeah. That's right. These, and it's a deceitful thing.
Yes, ma'am.
That they do today to carry on this deception.
Yes, ma'am.
And forcing people in schools to take tests and agree with this deception in order to get a grade.
That's right. And the saddest part about it, Ms. GeorgeAnn, is that when you look at it, if they would just there was a movement that got started really, really strong about the mid-'90s or so, when intelligent design and the whole idea came out about creation, and the scientists, these microbiologists were looking at this thing and was like, wait a minute, this so-called simple cell is not so simple at all. The average cell, even with bacteria and that sort of thing, has 5 times the activity occurring in it than does the largest city in this country. 5 times the activity. Imagine that. Imagine 5 New Yorks, 5 Atlantas, 5 Oklahoma Cities stacked on top of each other.
Wow.
And that gives you something close to what they can guess is the level of activity going on in one of your cells.
Wow.
And so, you had this thing where they were like, well, let's put this thing out there. And lo and behold, they ran into all kinds of strong, strict opposition. Scientists come across like, they're all about the truth and it's just the facts and principles. But that's not true. They're like everybody else. They have their own beliefs. They have their pet ideas about how they think the world should run. And they want that to be the only way it goes. And so by this point, you had such a strong evolutionary following that when these guys put this thing out there, they ran into such opposition. They said, look, we don't have to replace evolution. Let's put intelligent design against evolution as 2 determinable theories, and we'll show all the evidence that explains it according to creation and intelligent design, and all the evidence as it posits towards evolution. And the evolutionary scientists and the people in the high position said, no, we're not going to do that. I'll tell you why. Because they know if you really, really seriously take a look at the evidence, and you match it up to either one of those, you're going to find, beyond a shadow of a doubt, evolution cannot work. It cannot prove anything. There's no way we could have evolved. It's absolutely, positively impossible. And the more these scientists dig into the truth and dig into these disciplines and get more and more knowledge, the more they're beginning to conclude it's absolutely impossible. You could not have evolved. It's statistically impossible. It will not work.
Well, a man is still a man, a woman is still a woman.
That's right.
A rhinoceros is still a rhinoceros.
That's right.
And doesn't it say something in Scripture? I know there's a lot of things going on in the scientific world where they are mingling seed of one animal with another.
Yes.
In laboratories and creating what they call manimals, which the Bible touches briefly on this, the satyrs, that were they're part animal, part human.
That's right. That's one of those passages you really don't hear on a typical Sunday service, but you're absolutely right. And you see this very interesting thing, and when you get into the whole thing from Genesis 6:4, and I know a lot of people go back and forth, were the Nephilim, were they really man, were they really mixed with something else? But you see this whole thing, this very interesting history in the scriptures where you see the